spelling rule cards. Emily on our Facebook page asked a question. She says, I'm wondering about the spelling rule cards. We've been doing SWR with our 6-year-old, doing phonogram cards, but I'm seeing reference to spelling rule cards in section F. Can't say that I've officially introduced them other than casually and verbally. Should I start adding the rule cards with phonogram review time? Okay, Emily, great job. It sounds like you're doing a fantastic job. You get a prize. I don't know. I should have prizes here for these awesome questions. Maybe I should do that. Maybe we should have prizes for people who submitted questions and I was able to answer their questions. And Emily, this is a great question and it sounds like you're absolutely doing it right. Okay, so if we look at our scope and sequence, this is our scope and sequence. Let me show you. This is the inside cover of my Spelled Write and Read book. Inside cover has my scope and sequence. Okay, it is also, it's such an important page, it's actually on here twice. And so I have it here on page 12, and you notice mine's all color coded. Maybe sometime I'll do a video on my color coding. Okay, if I look here on my scope and sequence, I see step number 20 is spelling rule cards after F. Okay, so when I get to list F, that is the first time I will pull out the spelling rule cards. I do not use spelling rule cards. This is assuming I started at list A with a beginner. Okay, kindergarten, first grade, I start at list A. I do not use spelling rule cards until I get to list F. And Emily, very good job noticing that. Yes, as part of your warm-up, you're going to now include the spelling rule cards. So when I'm doing my warm-up at the beginning of my lesson, I like to teach new words on days 1 and 2 of my week. Okay, I split my list into half. I teach half on day 1 and half on day 2. And those are the days that I would use the spelling rule cards as part of my warm-up. So I will show the phonogram cards that the student has learned, and we will very quickly go through those. This is my warm-up. I would very quickly go through those phonograms, any phonograms that student has learned. That would be A through Z, and by the time I get to F, there's several of the multi-letter phonograms that the student would have been exposed to. Then okay, so that's the phonograms. Then I will show the rules, and the rule cards, what I do is I look at my WISE guide. So I'm in list F, and in my WISE guide, running down the side of the page, I have in brackets some numbers, and those are referring to the rules that are going to be used in the words I'm teaching that day. So I'm going to look here, I'm on page 15, list F, and I see 19, 29, 7, 19, 7, 2, 19, 19, 18, 17, 19, 25, and 10. What does that mean? Okay, let's say I'm teaching these 20 words this week. I'm going to teach half of the words on day 1, all right, Monday. Let's say I start on Monday. So I'm going to look here at these, and I'm going to pull out these rule cards. Notice, rule 29 is being used. Now let me say something about rule 29. There is no card for rule 29. There's only 28 rules that have cards. And by the way, rule 7 is the silent finalese, and you have 5 cards for the silent finalese. So you have 28 plus 4 more, 32 cards, okay? So rule 29, the reason there's no card for that is because it's a teacher's dictation rule. It's not a card that the student needs to see and practice that rule. It's that arrow, little. It's the thinking to spell both of the consonants when you have a double consonant in the middle of a word. So I look here, 29, rule 29 doesn't have a card. So I would want to have rule card number 19, 7, 2. Those are the only ones I need to have. So after I've done my phonograms, we've read through the cards, then I would show the student those cards. Now, Emily's question has to do with the fact that the student hasn't seen those cards yet. You're absolutely right. She or he, your student, has not seen those. So show rule number 2. And that, I believe, is the C rule. Yes, and so it shows the letter C. I don't have my cards with me. I should have had those. It shows the letter C, and then it's got a bracket, and it's got E, I, or Y. And I'll show the card, and I'll say, what rule do you think this might be talking about? And it's C usually says K, but C says S before E, I, or Y. I say, you got it. That's exactly right. Let's say the rule again. C usually says K, but C says S before E, I, or Y. Great. Put that one down. And then I show the next card, and there'll be the finally number 1. And I'll say, what rule do you think this might be? And you know what? Child has never seen those cards before. I don't expect her to know them. If she doesn't know, she goes, well, I don't know. I go, oh, I didn't know either. Here, I'll tell you what this one is. And then you tell them. And then you go through the cards that way. And then it's going to become automatic. The more you practice those, the better the student will get at them. Now it's day 2. I'm getting ready to go into my, I'm getting ready to teach the second half of this list. I look at my rule cards, 19, 18, 17, 25, and 10. So I'll pull those cards out. And then at the beginning, we'll practice the cards. So we practice with the phonogram cards, then we practice with the rule cards, then we do our quiz, and I'll give a quiz on 10 phonograms. With list F, I will have introduced the 5 errs. So guess what's going to show up on my quiz? Just 10 items. That's it. I might do 10 phonograms. I might do 5 phonograms and 5 review words. It's totally up to me. Any multi-letter phonograms that are coming up in my list that day, those are the ones that I want to make sure that I practice in my little written quiz. And then the student is ready. So when I teach the word bread, this is day 2, word, the first word of the second day, the word is bread, b-r-e-d, e-a-a. E-a-a would have shown up on my quiz for that day, so that the student will have already heard me say it, E-a-a, write it, and if he didn't remember it, we will have practiced that, and then he'll be ready for that when it comes up in the spelling dictation. So that's how I do my warm-ups. That's how I do the cards. The only time I use the spelling rule cards on days 4 or 5, 3 or 4. I don't use them on 5 because that's when I'm usually doing my tests. When I do the other days, the only time I'm using the cards is if I'm doing some reference page work and I want to review the rules. So let's say maybe I'm going to put some words on the eavesdropping page. Okay, so I'm using the black log here. We're on page 10. And so before we go to add any spelling words to that page, I'll say, well, let's practice our rule. And so I could pull out that rule card. Eavesdropping rule card would be 16. I'd pull that out and say, let's practice this rule together before we go into it. So that's how I would use the rule cards other times during the week. But you are absolutely right. So far, how has the student been learning the rules? You've been saying them together. You've been practicing them every single time they come up. Everything up to this point has been auditory. You will continue that. You will continue that. But now you've got another tool in your tool belt to practice the rules at the beginning of each session. Now, let's say that you're starting with an older student, and you'll notice, like, let's say you're starting at list M, and list M lists all of the phonograms, or sorry, rule cards that you would already pull out. Does it? No, she doesn't list them until M2. She has a list of the cards. I personally don't bring the cards out until maybe about the 5th or 6th week. I want to do exactly what I did with a beginner. Just practice the rules verbally and practice them together before I show the visuals, because I want them to hear and process those rules before we bring the visuals in. So even with older students, I don't bring the cards in until later, even though in the book they're listed.